Hey everybody, hope you all are doing well. I'm going to attempt to read. For some reason, YouTube doesn't allow me to upload videos past like 11 or 12 minutes. So I'm going to try to keep it 10 or under, and see if I can get through this section of Dickens, The Social Order. There's a particular passage in here that I thought was relevant to a lot of things that are going on today and people that I know in my life. So here we go. This is page 89. And yeah, Dickens and the Social Order. So, Chesterfield may have been a hypocrite and an opportunist, frigid both ethically and emotionally. But Mr. Chester is, after all, a real villain, and Dickens demonstrates through him not merely the distastefulness and bankruptcy of the Chesterfieldian sensibility, but the positive menace of its extreme implications as an active source of evil. Chester embodies the Chesterfieldian ideal of the gentlemanly persona as if it were a statue of it. His identity is the product of his own dexterous workmanship, a caricature of both artist and work of art at once, when he rides into the novel on horseback. This is now an excerpt from, this is a book not from Dickens. It's somebody who did like a critical analysis on Dickens, so now they're going to go in an excerpt that's actually Dickens' handwriting, or his words. So either man nor beast had turned a single hair, and, saving for his soiled skirts and spatterdashes, this gentleman, with his blooming face, white teeth, exactly ordered dress, and perfect calmness, might have come from making an elaborate and leisurely toilet to sit for an equestrian portrait at an old John Willet's gate. I was on from page 10. He is an art like Miss Jarley's, calm and classical. He is always the same, with a constantly unchanging air of coldness and gentility. But his characteristic calmness is, like Chesterfield's, instrumental. His self-command is not to be disturbed when it, this is quote, is not to be disturbed when it will serve my purpose, end quote. He controls himself in order to control others. With the accomplished gracefulness of his manner, he plays others as skilled musicians play instruments. He practices his manners constantly, even on beggars and servants. His dexterity is always perfect when he puts it to use. His conquest of Miss Varden is a tour de force. His subjugation of Hugh is a success still more spectacular. Even the king cannot resist the insinuating efficacy of, quote, such elegance of manner, so many graces of deportment and powers of conversation. Recognizing that Mr. was too common for such merit, His Majesty authenticates both the perfection and the potency of Mr. Chester's manners by rewarding them with a knighthood. Mr. Chester is hardly unique in his single-minded devotion to satisfying his wishes, as he points out. This is going back to Dickens' words. All men are fortune hunters, are they not? ? The law, the church, the court, the camp, see how they are all crowded with fortune hunters, jostling each other in the pursuit. You would be nothing else if you were the greatest courtier, lawyer, legislator, prelate, or merchant in existence. Back to the critical words of Myron Magnet. Nor should this sordid reality surprise us. Each of us has himself for the first article in his creed. As Chester believes, along with Lord Chesterfield, there is no such thing in human nature as natural affections or good-heartedness to supply selfless motives for behavior. I want to read that again because that one had me thinking about it for some time. So as Chester believes, along with Lord Chesterfield, there is no such thing in human nature as natural affections of good-heartedness to supply selfless motives for behavior. So they're pretty much saying that this character doesn't think that, good-heartedness is something natural. It's something that's taught to us. So he's saying that all humans, they're naturally born without that good-heartedness, which is an interesting statement. But anyway, to continue on, back to Dickens' words. Now, Do not, said Mr. Chester, talk in that monstrous manner. About to speak from your heart? Don't you know that the heart is an ingenuous part of your formation, the censure of the blood vessels and all that sort of thing, which has no more to do with what you say or think than your knees have? How can you be so very vulgar and absurd? These anatomical allusions should be left to gentlemen of the medical profession. They are really not agreeable in society. Saying that speaking about the heart is not agreeable in society. Back to the critical words of Myron Magnet. Dickens wrote this shortly after completing his novel of The Good Heart, and what he thinks of it goes without saying. But for Chester, as for Ralph Nickleby, the spirit does not mean the breath. The spirit does but mean the breath. Sorry, I said that wrong. The spirit does but mean the breath. No less consistent than Ralph, Chester reduces all complex motives to their basis in most mechanical elements, and at last he makes Ralph Nickleby's monstrous assertion that there's no such thing, I assure you, as love. He would agree with one of Laclos' dangerous acquaintances, a sensualist like himself, that love is merely a name we use to dignify the sordid pleasures of our appetites. Noble emotions are only empty words, as Chester remarks. I wonder, quote, I wonder no philosopher has ever established that our globe itself is hollow. It should be, if nature is consistent in her works. The denial of the existence of natural affections has two important aspects. In the first place, while Chester, like Lord Chesterfield, claims to be merely representative in his heartlessness, he nevertheless deems himself unique in his honest consciousness of that heartlessness, and his unflinching self-recognition gives him, in his view, a claim to a highly superior authenticity. Men who are thoroughly false and hollow, quote, Dickens says of him. This is going back to Dickens' words. All right. Seldom try to hide those vices from themselves, and yet in the very act of avowing them, they claim to the virtues they feign most to despise. Quote, for, they say, this is honesty, this is truth, all mankind are like us, but they have not the candor to avow it. The more they affect to deny the existence of any sincerity in the world, the more they would be thought to possess it in its boldest shape. Back to what Myron Magnet has to say about Dickens' words. We have met with this argument before in Ralph Nickleby, and what these two complex and gifted villains who fascinate Dickens so keenly even while he condemns them have most in common is the interconnection in each of them of a denial of natural affection with an insistence on personal authenticity, an equation completed by the license this superior authenticity gives them to despise utterly the vast mass of weak and stupid other men. Dickens presents the workings of the equation in Chester thus. The despisers of mankind, apart from the mere fools and mimics of that creed, are of two sorts. They who believe their merit neglected and unappreciated make up one class. They who receive adulation and flattery, knowing their own worthlessness, compose the other. Be sure that the coldest-hearted misanthropes are ever of this last order. In Chester, who is a cynic of this second category, one has not only the modern paradox of a fraud whose consciousness of his fraudulence constitutes his authenticity, but also the further paradox that it is the consciousness of his worthlessness that makes him authentic, and his authenticity redeems and therefore cancels the worthlessness on which it is founded and replaces it with a superiority so lofty that all other men become despicable by contrast. In the second place, the denial of natural affection forms part of a larger assertion of radical freedom for Chester no less than for Lord Chesterfield or Ralph Nickleby. It is another instance of the claim that nothing in one's character is determined or fixed, and one is free to do and be whatever one wants. This idea comes together with Chester's right to despise his fellow men and his belief that all men are as unscrupulously self-interested as himself to form a worldview in which he is licensed to make use of everybody in any way he likes. Thus, the Chesterfieldian ethic, insofar as Dickens' satire of it exposes its ultimate consequence, is by no means sociable. Chesterfield and Chester take the forms of sociability and reverse their sign. They transform the ceremonies of community into instruments of radical individualism. Consider, for example, this reflection of Chester's. I think I'm going to stop it there because we're at 10:30, but I might try to finish the rest of this later. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed it or found something interesting. All right, love you all. Bye.